Gentlemen, society often paints aging as a decline, especially for women. But the truth, older women are a mystery, a force of nature wrapped in experience, emotional intelligence, and psychological depth. If you think you understand them, think again. Older women have a level of emotional mastery that can be both captivating and intimidating. This isn't something they were born with, it's something they earned through years of lived experiences, hardships, relationships, and personal growth. Emotional intelligence isn't a trend for them, it's their reality. They've been through situations that force them to understand the depths of their own emotions: heartbreak, divorce, betrayal, motherhood, financial ups and downs, losing people they once thought they couldn't live without. These experiences have refined them. They no longer get rattled by the small things that used to throw them off balance in their youth. They've learned how to sit with pain, how to process complex feelings, and how to move through emotional storms with grace instead of panic. This means they're rarely impulsive. They take a step back, assess the situation, and respond thoughtfully. If you try to push their buttons, don't expect a dramatic reaction. You're more likely to be met with silence or a cool, measured response that communicates volumes without a raised voice. This can be unsettling for men who are used to emotional outbursts or passive-aggressive games. Older women won't play those games. They value emotional maturity in themselves and expect it from others. And if you can't meet them on that level, they'll quietly disengage, not because they don't care, but because they've outgrown the chaos. It's not just about managing their own emotions, they're often more attuned to yours as well. They can sense when you're being dishonest with yourself, when you're avoiding something, when you're using pride or bravado to cover insecurity. They won't always call you out directly, but they'll adjust how they engage with you based on what they see. And if you're emotionally volatile, they'll likely distance themselves. They aren't impressed by high highs and low lows. They want steady energy, emotional safety, and self-awareness. They also understand boundaries far better than they did when they were younger. They've learned, often the hard way, that emotional peace is sacred, and they won't trade it for temporary excitement or fleeting attention. If they sense you're emotionally reckless, they'll remove themselves from the equation without guilt. They know the cost of emotional instability, and they've paid it before. They're not going to do it again. Another aspect of their emotional mastery is how they navigate vulnerability. They're no longer afraid of being seen, truly seen. They know that strength doesn't mean having it all together at all times. They can express vulnerability without shame, and they're drawn to men who can do the same. But here's the catch. They expect emotional transparency, not emotional dependency. There's a difference. They want a man who can open up, not one who needs saving, and they have no interest in becoming your emotional crutch. What's also important to understand is that their emotional intelligence makes them selective. They've likely been in relationships where they overgave, overcompromised, or tried to fix someone. They've learned that lesson, so now they're looking for emotional reciprocity. If you don't bring peace, clarity, and self-control into the relationship, they'll simply walk away quietly but permanently. This is why being with an older woman requires a deeper level of emotional maturity as a man. She's not going to chase you. She's not going to beg for attention. She's not going to tolerate hot and cold behavior. She'll observe how you handle stress, disappointment, and difficult conversations. She'll notice whether you self-regulate or lash out. And if she sees patterns of emotional immaturity, she'll retreat not out of bitterness, but because she knows where that road leads. In a world where emotional chaos is often normalized, older women are like emotional anchors. They don't thrive in drama, they rise above it. And when you encounter one who has truly mastered her emotional world, you'll feel it instantly. She won't be loud about it. She won't need to prove it. It will be in how she carries herself, how she listens, how she speaks, and how she walks away from anything that disturbs her peace without needing to explain herself. Older women have no time or tolerance for drama, and that's not just a personality trait, it's a psychological evolution. As women mature, their priorities shift from chasing excitement and external validation to seeking peace, purpose, and connection. When they were younger, many older women experienced the highs and lows of emotionally intense relationships, the kind filled with passion, unpredictability, and sometimes even toxicity. Those experiences taught them one essential truth: drama is exhausting, and depth is far more fulfilling. So now they crave conversations that go beyond surface level attraction or material status. They want to know what drives a man, not what he owns. They want to understand how he thinks, what he believes in, how he processes emotions, and how he deals with adversity. This depth they seek is rooted in psychological maturity. Over time, a woman's brain develops a stronger prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning, emotional regulation, and long-term decision-making. That means older women are more thoughtful and intentional in how they choose their partners. They're no longer swayed by charm alone. They're looking for substance, for values that align with theirs, for emotional intelligence, for consistency. They notice how you speak about others, how you respond to conflict, and whether your actions match your words. These are not things they casually overlook anymore. They've spent too much time in relationships that looked good on the outside but lacked depth and honesty on the inside. What truly sets older women apart is that they've outgrown the need to entertain what doesn't serve them. If a man is inconsistent, evasive, or shallow in his communication, they won't chase clarity, they'll simply withdraw. And this isn't a test, it's self-respect. They've learned how costly it is to invest emotionally in someone who isn't equipped for real intimacy. So now, they conserve their energy for those who bring something meaningful to the table. Small talk, vague compliments, and temporary flings don't excite them. They want dialogue that stimulates their mind. They want connection that nurtures their soul. They're also more in tune with their emotional needs and aren't afraid to express them. In their youth, they may have feared being too much or too needy, and may have stayed silent to keep the peace, but older women have moved past that fear. They understand that expressing emotional needs isn't weakness, it's wisdom. They don't demand emotional availability, they require it. They want a partner who can handle depth, who isn't afraid to explore uncomfortable topics, who doesn't shut down when emotions arise. And when a man tries to engage with them without that level of openness, they feel it instantly. The conversation feels shallow, the energy feels transactional, and they lose interest, not because they're cold, but because they've trained themselves to protect their peace. Another key psychological element here is self-actualization. Older women often reach a stage in life where they begin to align with who they truly are, not who society told them to be. They've peeled back layers of conditioning, people-pleasing, and performative femininity. Now, they value authenticity above all else. They don't want to perform for a man, and they certainly don't want a man who's performing for them. They want truth, even when it's uncomfortable. They'd rather be with someone honest and flawed than someone polished and fake. And that authenticity has to run deep, not just in words, but in behavior. They're quick to notice incongruence. If you say one thing and live another, they'll see through it. They're not easily impressed because they've seen enough to know what's real and what's not. This craving for depth also shows in the way they form connections. They may take longer to open up, not out of fear, but because they're intentional. They want to see if you're capable of holding space for their vulnerability, if you're safe enough to trust. And when they do open up, it's never performative. It's real, it's raw, and it's rare, the kind of depth that most men aren't prepared for unless they've done the work themselves. That's why surface-level flirtation or shallow attraction doesn't work. You might get their attention for a moment, but you won't keep it unless there's something deeper behind your words, behind your eyes, behind your presence. And finally, older women have reached a point where they've redefined what romance means. It's no longer about flowers and dates, it's about consistency, emotional presence, and being understood. A text that shows attentiveness matters more than a grand gesture. A conversation that dives into purpose and pain is more seductive than sweet nothings. They want to feel seen, not just looked at. And when they find a man who can meet them there at that deep, soul-connected level, they're more open, more passionate, and more loyal than ever. But that kind of connection can't be fake. It has to be real, and that's the psychological truth that separates them from younger women. They're not chasing attention, they're inviting alignment. There's a deeply misunderstood truth about older women that many men fail to recognize. They are often in the most confident, self-assured phase of their sexual lives. This confidence doesn't stem from fantasy or performance, but from decades of self-discovery, trial and error, and emotional growth. Unlike younger women who may still be navigating societal expectations, self-esteem struggles, or body image insecurities, older women have reached a point where they are no longer seeking approval for how they express their sensuality. They own it. They don't need permission to be desirable. They don't ask for validation before expressing what they like or want. They've come to know their bodies not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically. This self-awareness transforms the way they approach intimacy. Their sexual confidence is not about being overt or flashy. In fact, it's often quiet, subtle, and incredibly powerful. It's in how they move, how they speak, how they make eye contact. It's in the calm assurance they carry, knowing they don't have to chase, they attract. And that attraction isn't always about appearance. It's about energy. A woman who is comfortable in her own skin radiates a presence that's far more intoxicating than anything superficial. She's not trying to be sexy, she just is asterisk, because she knows who she is. For many older women, their sexual liberation comes from finally breaking free of the internalized shame and guilt that society imposes on female desire. As they age, they become more fearless in reclaiming their right to pleasure. They stop worrying about being judged or labeled. They start asking for what they want, clearly and unapologetically. They're not passive participants in intimacy, they're active, engaged, and intentional. They've spent years learning what turns them on, what makes them feel safe, what makes them feel desired, and now they bring that knowledge into every interaction. This level of sexual self-assurance can be disarming for men who are used to being the initiators or the ones in control. With an older woman, you're not leading, you're co-creating. She has desires, preferences, boundaries, and a voice. She's not going to fake pleasure or pretend to be satisfied just to boost your ego. She's going to tell you what works for her, and she expects you to listen. That kind of honesty can be intimidating if you're insecure, but if you're mature enough to appreciate it, it becomes one of the most liberating and satisfying experiences you'll ever have. What makes older women different is that they approach sexuality holistically. For them, it's not just about physical pleasure, it's about emotional connection, mental stimulation, and spiritual energy. They want intimacy to feel meaningful. They want to feel safe, respected, and emotionally seen before they open themselves physically. And when they do, it's not just about sex, it's about full body presence. They want to be touched with intention, kissed with awareness, and engaged with mindfulness. Quick, mindless hookups don't interest them. They want depth, connection, and real chemistry, not performance. Many older women have gone through phases where they suppressed their own pleasure to accommodate others. They may have been in long-term relationships where their needs were overlooked or misunderstood. Coming out of those experiences, they often enter a phase of reclamation. They start putting their own desires at the forefront. They begin exploring their sensuality without guilt. They try new things, express new fantasies, and demand new standards. They're done settling for mediocre experiences, and they know they're not too old to feel wanted, ravished, or adored. In fact, they know they deserve it more now than ever. There's also a mental liberation that enhances their sensuality. Older women often let go of the obsessive body consciousness that plagues younger women. They stop chasing impossible beauty standards and start embracing their natural bodies, the curves, the scars, the changes. And when a woman accepts herself fully, she becomes magnetic. That level of acceptance makes her more present, more giving, and more emotionally available. She's not in her head, worrying about how she looks in the moment. She's in her body, enjoying the experience, tuned into the connection, and emotionally available in a way many men have never experienced before. Another powerful aspect of their sexual psychology is their independence. They don't need sex to feel valuable. They want it because they choose it. There's a difference. They're not using sex as a tool for validation or control. They're using it as an expression of authenticity and desire. And because they don't need you, their willingness to be with you is a conscious, empowered decision. That changes the dynamic completely. When you're with an older woman, you're with someone who has options, who knows her worth, and who will not settle for being treated as an afterthought or an object. This independence also means they set clearer boundaries. They're more in touch with what they will and won't tolerate. If they sense that you're emotionally unavailable, self-centered, or disconnected, they'll walk away not out of anger, but because they respect themselves. They know that bad sex is worse than no sex. They know that physical intimacy without emotional alignment is hollow, and they won't engage unless they feel deeply respected and energetically safe. So many men chase youth without realizing that with age comes not only wisdom, but the kind of self-possession that transforms intimacy into something sacred. Older women understand that true sensuality isn't about what you look like, it's about how you feel about yourself. And when a woman feels powerful in her skin, when she loves her body and her mind, she becomes unstoppable. Being with her is not just about pleasure, it's about awakening something deeper in yourself as a man. Something primal, grounded, and real. Older women have refined their intuition through years of experience, observation, and personal growth. Unlike younger women who may still be navigating the complexities of interpersonal communication, older women have had time to sharpen their emotional radar to an almost psychic level. They notice everything. They don't just rely on what you say. In fact, what you say matters less than how you say it, when you say it, and especially what you leave out. She picks up on your body language, how you fidget, how your eyes shift, the micro expressions that flash across your face before you catch yourself. She hears the hesitation in your voice when you try to fabricate a story. She sees through the bravado, the overcompensation, the slick talk. You might think you're being smooth, but to her, your inconsistencies are flashing red lights. This level of perceptiveness is not something she boasts about. It's simply how she navigates the world. Her intuition is her armor, her compass, and her filter. It has been shaped by years of heartbreak, betrayal, joy, and connection. She's been lied to before. She's been manipulated, charmed, ghosted, gaslighted, and adored. And from every experience she has taken notes, stored data, and made mental upgrades. So now, when you stand in front of her, you're not just being heard. You're being *red*. Every word is cross-referenced against a library of past experiences. Every gesture is measured. Every pause is analyzed, and here's where most men fail. They assume that confidence or charm can bypass her discernment. It can't. You can't seduce her with superficial confidence or generic compliments. She's met that man before, probably 10 times over. What matters to her now is congruence. Are your words aligned with your actions? Is your energy calm or frantic? Are you grounded in your truth? Or are you trying to perform a version of yourself that you think she wants to see? She'll know. Before you even finish your sentence, she'll sense whether you're genuine or just another actor on the stage. The only way to navigate this level of perception is through radical honesty. Not performative honesty, but real, soul-level truthfulness. You must be intentional in your words, clear in your boundaries, and secure in your values. If you're unsure of yourself, she'll feel it. If you're saying one thing and meaning another, she'll sense the dissonance. And if you're trying to manipulate or impress her with half-truths, she won't confront you with drama. She'll simply disengage. She won't waste her time trying to decode someone who doesn't even know who he is. This is why authenticity is everything. It's not just about telling the truth, it's about living it. She wants a man who doesn't need to be deciphered. A man whose presence speaks louder than his promises. A man who doesn't play games because he values clarity over control. To be in her presence is to be on sacred ground, and she doesn't suffer fools. She's not interested in potential. She's interested in proof, and proof in her eyes is not in your words. It's in your energy, your actions, and your alignment. Older women aren't interested in fixing anyone. That instinct, once rooted in youthful optimism or naivety, has long faded into something far more grounded. Clarity. She's been there before. She's tried to be the supportive girlfriend who believed in a man's potential, who gave time, energy, and emotional labor in the hopes that he'd eventually grow into the man he promised he could be. She's sat through the excuses, the missed deadlines, the broken promises, and the cycles of ambition followed by apathy. And through those experiences, she learned a hard truth. Potential is seductive, but it's also dangerous. Potential is the idea of what could be, not the reality of what is. And she no longer has the appetite for fantasies disguised as futures. She's not impressed by the man who talks about what he's going to do. She's focused on the man who's already doing it. Talk is cheap to her now. She listens with discernment, not eagerness. She watches how a man moves through the world, how he handles pressure, how he treats people who can't benefit him, how consistent he is when no one is watching. These are her metrics, because peace, at this point in her life, is more valuable than passion alone. She's not chasing butterflies or dramatic highs and lows. She doesn't crave the roller coaster anymore. She wants the stable road, the kind where she can breathe deeply, rest fully, and feel emotionally safe. A man might think passion is enough to win her over, but she knows that passion without stability is chaos. She's been burned by that fire before. She's experienced the intoxicating highs that come with charming, inconsistent men who pull her in only to disappear or unravel when life gets real. So now, she chooses differently. She chooses peace over unpredictability. She chooses presence over potential. She chooses emotional maturity over emotional volatility. When she looks at a man, she's asking herself silent questions. Is his life stable, or is it a mess wrapped in charisma? Does he handle conflict with emotional regulation, or does he explode, withdraw, or blame others? Can he sit in silence without needing to be the center of attention? Can he create a space where she feels emotionally held, not drained? These aren't just preferences, they are requirements, and they aren't spoken out loud because she expects a man of value to already know them. If she senses drama, instability, or unresolved trauma disguised as passion, she won't engage in a debate or a rescue mission. She'll simply retreat, not out of spite, but out of wisdom. She's no longer willing to sacrifice her well-being for potential. She understands the cost of compromising her peace. Her time is not for sale, her emotions are not up for negotiation, and her heart is not a project site. She wants a partner, not a patient. She desires mutual emotional availability, not emotional labor disguised as love. And most of all, she wants a relationship that adds to her life, not one that demands she put her own needs on the shelf to carry the weight of someone else's unrealized growth. This is why older women seem unbothered or difficult to impress. It's not that they're closed off, it's that they're clear. They've done the inner work. They've healed, reflected, and grown. They've let go of the need to be chosen and have instead chosen themselves. They don't need a man to complete them. They're already whole. So the only man who can walk beside them is one who's also done his work. One who's not looking for a savior, a cheerleader, or a therapist in disguise. One who understands that a peaceful life is a priceless one, and that love should be a sanctuary, not a storm. If a man brings more chaos than clarity, more tension than trust, she won't explain herself. She'll simply walk away because she knows what it took to build her peace, and she's not willing to trade it for the thrill of trying to fix someone who isn't ready to fix himself. So here's what you need to understand. Older women are not harder to love. They simply require a different kind of man, a man who's not obsessed with proving himself, but grounded in knowing who he is. A man who brings peace, not pressure, presence, not promises, depth, not drama. They're not looking to be rescued, entertained, or impressed. They've already danced with chaos, flirted with fantasy, and outgrown the noise. What they want now is clarity, simplicity, stability, and most of all, truth. If you're not ready to meet her there, that's fine. She won't shame you. She won't fight you. She'll just keep walking, with grace, with wisdom, and with the quiet strength of a woman who's already been through the fire and came out refined. Respect that, rise to it, or be left behind.